Welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Christopher Prunty. Gentlemen, always good to have you. On today's episode, we have a patron-backed email that we're going to be diving into. But before we do, I just wanted to shout out a new patron, not the one that's giving us the email, but someone else that we have that's new. But before we get into today's episode, I did want to send out a huge thank you to our newest patron, Jacob. He's been a contributor to the show in the past, and I just want to say thank you for joining our patrons. And remember that if you wanted to join our patrons as well, you can always go to our Patreon link in each description and give generously, or not so generously. Frankly, any amount of money is too generous, so that's fine too. And the other thing is, of course, if you want to just send a prompt in before joining our Patreon, you can do so by sending an email to worldbuildwithus@gmail.com, or you can go ahead and shoot us a tweet over at Let's Worldbuild, or come join our Discord community, link also in the description. Anyway, now that we've got all the shilling out of the way, let's go ahead and roll right into today's prompt. This is coming in from Seth. And he is saying, "Hello, world builders. Love your show and all the crazy cool ideas that evolve between you and your guests. I wanted to express my gratitude by pitching in as a patron. And for my episode prompt, I have chosen the setting known as Rhydin. Other listeners of a certain age may recognize this name. I was reminded of it during a recent episode, The Legend of Linka and Zelda, which explored multiverse of timelines for the land of Hyrule. Similar to that setting, Rhydin is a nexus of all multiverses, high fantasy, sci-fi, and generally any setting or genre one can think of, canonical or otherwise. There is a catch, however. It's very hard to leave, and most who end up there are accidental immigrants, armies sucked into exotic artifacts, starmen who made a bad hyperspace jump, victims of miscast translocations, lost spirits, and so on. It's a place for misfits and mashups, diverse and, at least early in its history, extremely chaotic. Rhydin is also where my wife and I first met, as part of an online role-playing community that improvised a lot of really cool stories involving everything from power-mad warlords to shape-shifting wizards to pet Komodo dragons. I was there mostly in the late 90s. Others familiar with my setting may disagree somewhat with my characterization, and to them I say none of this exists as canon except in the memories of those who were there. Still, they should come find me on Discord and we can talk about the old times. I want to hear what you think this setting would become as time passed and some stability emerges. Who are the big players, politically, economically, militarily, and so on? What kind of weird shit gains a foothold in the dark undercity? Random beings and objects still arrive regularly from the dimensional nexus at the heart of Rhydin, though by now, existing denizens are perhaps more well-equipped to manage the traffic they were than in the past. Most of the time, anyway. Thanks, and keep up the great work, Seth." Gentlemen, as someone who was in the bad old days of AOL chat rooms and doing some Pokemon role-playing of my own, can we talk about AOL for a second? Because I imagine that we have some listeners who have no idea what we're talking about.
I started in Yahoo chat, not AOL chat, although I had AIM Messenger, of course.
Everyone had a messenger back in the day, Daniel. So yeah, I mean, of a certain age, as he says, though.
Of a certain age.
Yeah. I definitely remember having some Pokemon battles when I was like 12 years old, just by like seeing who can basically type the fastest and make up as much shit that they learned from the anime as possible. Like that's basically what it was.
Also, do you remember the free dial-up internet though, Net Zero?
Oh, of course. You had Net Zero and Netscape and all of those good ones back in the day.
Getting your internet on a CD.
Yep.
Yes, and then having so many free internet CDs that you just threw them away, because that is how that giant, berg of plastic exists in the ocean now, is because of so many goddamn AOL discs.
That's actually the internet.
It's just what is it? Just an island of AOL discs is just the internet. Yeah.
I remember a professor I had who not only still had his AOL email, but he paid for it for years.
Dear God.
Even in now, this is only maybe like 5-7 years ago.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I was the first one on Gmail, but I had a Gmail pretty early on, but I stuck to my old Hotmail account for the longest time because I just had, like that was just who I was back in the day. But gentlemen, we are clearly diving into nostalgia. So let's go ahead and establish some tenets for this early internet age wonder that is Rhydin. Who wants to go first?
One of the things that I want to be well established about the setting is that the influx of people have never stopped. And I believe in the email itself, it might have mentioned that it wasn't just people that would come in, but also resources or other things that were on their person. The main thing of the economy I wanted to be based around is scavengers and people who pick off from this trash heap an area where new people are coming in, and it's kind of like a weird raider baron kind of economy where they're not like the people who are in control, but when you're outside of the main city states or whatever, these are the power players who are gathering up the cheaper, easier resources to gather, or hoping that they find something rare from, I don't know, since it's a multiverse, more highly advanced universe.
So maybe what you're suggesting here is that the power structure has evolved to essentially hoovering up the new citizens of Rhydin, essentially, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's where we can kind of locate, powerful resource. But I'm not familiar with Rhydin too much, so I can't really speak to that. But is it a singular nexus where everyone arrives at the same place and then disperses? Because if it's a singular place, I would imagine that everyone is fighting over that area pretty consistently.
Yeah, I think so. I think it should be a specific area, whether it's within one city or within the boundaries of one space. Maybe it's a large space where they arrive.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Red Dragon Inn, because Rhydin is just RD Inn, which is Red Dragon Inn. It's like that's for our younger listeners. That's how we kind of created internet lingo back in the day. You just mashed up words and smushed them together. And that's basically what Rhydin means, is RD Inn. It's just the shorter portmanteau version of it.
But does it have to be an inn? Like, I know just glancing at the lore too, it seems like that was the original place, but it seems like it evolved.
Well, we also wanted to do it as how this place would be in the future of it.
Yeah.
Right. So my question to you is, how did they split where the nexus would be then? Because if we're going to be doing it so it's not just a singular nexus, I'd love to do it so it's more than, like, I'd love to create some backstory there.
Well, you could do it as my way. It is a chaotic battlefield of where people are like fighting for power, but since there's no way to really build a base of power on this kind of sandcastle of people coming in, like all it would take is say 200 super advanced cyborg soldiers came in and you were like, oh crap, I was not prepared for this. And they start destroying your fort and you're like, well, that guy's no longer in power. But he really can enjoy the brief amount of power that he did have and everything. And that's where those the robber baron people that I was saying come in handy, because the actual seat of power will be like, yeah, we'll give you money, we'll give you people, we might try and keep you in power longer, but if another person comes up and undercuts you because you got destroyed by a bunch of cyborgs, fuck it, we'll hire them.
Okay, but this idea just popped into my head as you were saying this. Can we have a curated experience for, like, welcome to the Nexus, like welcome to Rhydin, where it's like you're essentially on like a people mover, and like, let's say 200 cyborg soldiers all kind of come through, but like this is the most well defended area, right? So it's like you can come in, but you're gonna sit through the tour, and then maybe at the end there's like a job fair style thing where recruiters are there, like, come join our faction, where it's like that's the level, because that's like, there's like a weird Disneyfication that I have of this place.
Are you
Because
saying like that you have to take the small world ride before you enter?
yes, you have to ride the people mover, and you have to understand, like, in order for you to get into the world outside.
So
See,
that would assume that there was a very powerful group that maybe established a kind of order to the space where you arrive. Like, it may have been chaotic in the beginning, but they've set up this Disney space on top of it now.
well,
I'd actually like to think that this is the only place in the entire giant multiversal dimensional plane where this is the place where it's a neutral zone. You know, like, everyone's trying to recruit, but they all need everyone's cooperation so this place doesn't fall apart.
So, but the question would be, like, in any neutral space, like, they must have a big stick that keeps it neutral at their disposal.
well, that's the thing. If you don't play nice in this area, you
Right.
don't get a seat at the table at all.
Yes,
Like,
you lose new recruits, which is a huge deal.
Yeah.
So I do want to take that idea, and I want to introduce one of my tenets to it, because as soon as I saw this, I got a huge nostalgia boner, because, man, I just have a weird fondness for that age, because it's like the age of my childhood. So obviously I'd have that. And thus, I would like to create the tenet that Rhydin still exists, new people still come in. However, there's no media that, you know, like, there's no canonical media that comes in after 1999. So if it was created after 1999, it cannot come into this version of Rhydin. You can still have all of your, like, you know, early Star Wars stuff. You can still have all of your original Battlestar Galactica. You can have all of your fantasy stuff and every kind of fan fiction that's, you know, grinded up and mashed up in between. But you can't have, like, new Doctor Who. You can't have Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, you can't have Naruto. You can't have those massive pieces of weirdo fiction that made themselves into Rhydin eventually. I want it so, like, there is a cutoff. 1999. As soon as the clock turns over and hits 2000, no more media is allowed in. Because part of the experience of Rhydin, from what I was reading, was like seeing that Jedi were in there and seeing that, like, you know, Super Saiyans were a part of the canon and stuff like that, and just going with pure chaos. And I want to keep that. And I also want to steep it in a whole bunch of 90s nostalgia as well.
So this setting is literally a fan fiction. Like, it's not that we're creating a setting that is its own thing inspired by Rhydin, but it literally is fan fiction.
Yes, essentially. But so I actually had justification for this, in that Rhydin itself is a tulpa. It is the, like, psychic manifestation of the 90s in general, specifically mid to late 90s. But it is everyone's, you know, like, collective unconscious creating this area that traps all of the 90s fictional worlds and role-playing shit that happens into it.
It sounds dangerously close to Ready Player One, but in the 90s.
Yeah, but not shit. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. You know, like, so like, let's have it be a good version of Ready Player One. You know, like, that's the ultimate ideal. Also, really low-hanging fruit, but that's going to be easy to do. I mean, like, have you read Ready Player One? I read it and I was like, that was okay. And then I started to reread it. I'm like, this is not good.
It's horrible.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I
never watched the movie.
Even tried Ready Player 2?
Oh God, no.
Bother.
No. I remember seeing some, like, leaked Twitter shit, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm not even for a hate read, not even for a, like, ironic read. I feel like as I get older, I have less patience for ironic readings and ironic viewings of, like, bad movies and stuff. Although actually that's not true. Not with the bad movies. I'm always down for a bad movie.
I was
but, like, when it comes to reading, I think it's because reading just takes so much more of my time and focus that it's like, nah, I could be reading something good. Fuck this. All right. So before we move on, any other ideas towards the 90s tulpa shit?
What about things that exist from the 90s but continue to exist now? Like, I know you were saying that not new Star Wars, but old Star Wars can, but what about The Simpsons kind of thing?
So with that, so like any character introduced after 1999, there's a cutoff. They can't come in. And what actually that introduces to me, I think, which is an interesting concept, is there are going to be characters who have existed after 1999 who will have memories of post 1999, but will like, they're essentially like blocked from that. And it's like, wait a minute, what happened to that chunk of time? I have existed after this. And there's like a weird kind of existential crisis to it, I think would be kind of interesting.
Mm.
But again, it's mostly fan fiction, so fuck it, right?
True. I'm also
Yeah.
wondering if does the scale of the fandom have anything to do with the power?
No.
Okay.
Because I think that is I think that will actually I'll actually touch on that a little bit more in my second tenet. But I'm going to say just a flat no to that right now, because I feel like, you know, like that it's a nebulous thing, right? When you want to talk about like how much you love something or where that kind of equates to a power level, essentially, right?
Yeah.
But
So are the people who are in this setting, they have to absolutely be other fictional characters. Like you can't have an original character because they don't conform to an existing fandom.
No, not at all. No. That's not what I'm suggesting. It's just that as Seth was kind of talking about, is that, you know, those fictional canonical things do exist, but so do non-canonical things. You know what I mean? So you could have legally distinct thing from 2000 and beyond, but no one would recognize it. It's not like they'd be attached to a specific franchise.
So if this is a multiverse, what you're saying is basically there's other realities out there where a fiction that we've thought of is a real thing that's being pulled into this space, but there's a rule that according to our reality beyond 1999, they can't enter the space.
All right, Daniel, you're making me go into my second tenet, which I've created justifications for this. And
I'm just trying to like understand how this mechanically works, you know?
All right. So here's my idea, okay? Here's my second tenet, you son of a bitch. Here's what it is. The idea is, in 1999, the people in world of Rhydin had to save the rest of the multiverse by stopping the Millennium Plague, or as we would know it in our world, the Y2K virus.
Oh my God.
Yes. So in their world, they have this massive quest and they are able to stop the Millennium Plague. But as a result, they shut themselves off on a timeline. So they can still get things from past 2000, but nothing can escape, right? That's kind of the conceit behind the prompt. And this idea is that they've essentially time locked themselves to prevent the Millennium Plague, aka Y2K bug, from escaping. That was my second tenet.
Okay.
Daniel, I don't think you were prepared for the level of dumb shit for this prompt.
No, I came into this thinking that we would take the concept of Rhydin and make a setting rather than turn kind of tie our hands with fan fiction. That's why I'm confused.
We still can, absolutely. Because now that we have all of this fan fiction, we have to figure out how they coexist with one another and how like power structures advance.
I also want to just say that since we've said that time has advanced, how do I put this? Some slash fic has happened, and we're dealing with a lot of the descendants of people.
Well, I imagine that tulpas could also be ageless in a way, but we could be dealing with generational shit as well. Could also be a thing.
They might be ageless, but they also might be kind of like the heroes that died in the long ago. Like they could still die
against the Millennium Plague. Yeah, that could also be a really great way to kind of force us into a more original thing where these are essentially the descendants of the Skywalkers or descendants of, like Vegeta Goku, like that could absolutely be a thing.
Wait, did you Vegeta go to... Okay.
Oh no, that's the ship pairing between Vegeta and Goku, isn't it?
In some writings, yes.
Well, I mean, in my writings, it is. So.
I'm trying to think of the novel that I have here that deals
My
with
Darkest Dementia.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing that I'm also kind of looking forward to. Is just like I kind of want to explore like how bad fan fiction characters evolve, because I think that's kind of interesting to think about, because eventually they become unshackled from their angsty teenage writing. Like everyone had the character when they were younger that's like, I'm half angel, half demon, or like has a tragic backstory that's really dumb and makes no sense. But then, like, eventually that character is forced to evolve because they're untethered from their shitty writing. And that's where we can kind of come in and create interesting experiences and stories to tell.
Oh, so going back to what you were saying about things that also exist after the 2000s but don't have any memory of it, is this kind of like Toy Story in the way that they aren't essentially bound to the character that they were created as, but they will evolve into something?
Yes. Like, and they might even have echoes of that original character, but then eventually they're like, wait a minute, I'm not that person anymore. Like they can create their own or they can, grow their own personalities from then on.
Nice.
I feel like we've still lost Daniel here. I feel like his silence speaks volumes, and it honestly hurts me a little bit.
His silence is deafening.
It's reminding me somewhat of a novel called I think it's Thursday Next. I don't know if the author's last name, Jasper Fjord, maybe, or Fjord. Where basically it's a city where it's populated by literary characters. And I don't know much more beyond the premise of it because I haven't read it, but it's similar. It sounds similar to that concept.
Yeah, it's okay. So it's that concept, or it's like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic, not the movie. It's like, it's basically taking all of these characters and then putting them in the same place. And then, like it's like time in a bottle, watching that kind of like, it's time locked, but then watching that same population grow from there in their own autonomous zone.
So I guess the question that I have, this is where I'm struggling with, is what's the relationship of the characters to people who are not characters from a fiction?
Well, that's where we come in.
Coexist. Yeah.
That's where we come in. That's where we create the fiction. I'm creating the framework around it. And then that was my tenet anyway. I was like, I want to create kind of a loose framework surrounding it that adds in some interesting flavor. I wanted to leave a lot of the power structure stuff up to you guys if possible. And hopefully one of you did that. Otherwise, we're just going to have to make it up as we go. And God knows we're just terrible.
We're going to do a great job with that.
Yeah. So, Daniel, why don't you tell us one of your tenets and we can see what we can kind of reconcile here?
So my tenets are usually more broad, but what I was thinking is that Rhydin being this nexus, it has a secret that it's slowly collapsing in on itself, and that it's eventually this will lead to its total destruction, not of just Rhydin, but of the multiverse itself. And there is someone or something that's causing it to happen, and only a few people know about this.
I mean, I would imagine that it has something to do with like, I created that Millennium Plague as like kind of a fun nod and a joke and a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I feel like we could probably do something like that, where it's like, if the Millennium Plague does get out, it can cause massive disruption to the rest of the multiverse.
Yeah, and I guess the main thing is that it's intentionally caused too, is the other concept.
Interesting. Okay. What do you mean by that? So it's like, it's a creation is what you're suggesting.
Yeah, like there's someone or something behind it.
Oh God. Okay, hold on. This is going to sound super dumb. Is it a plot hole?
Oh my God.
It is
the kind
like
of thing that would be in Thursday Next.
It's the combination of all plot holes.
That's what I mean. It's like the hungry maw that is all plot holes. It's like it's a hole in the universe. It's literally
someone's like deliberately creating a plot hole.
Yes, exactly. And like where else are you going to get like an ocean of plot holes than non-canonical AOL forum like really loose role-playing games, right?
Maybe the collection of people from contradicting realities is slowly creating that kind of contradiction, and someone's capitalizing on it to create
All
the
right.
plot hole.
Okay, Daniel, I got to stop the podcast. I feel like you're not on board with this.
What do you mean? I'm trying to get there.
Okay, what can we do?
I don't really care at all for a fandom universe. That's the problem.
So that's the thing. We can make it. So what would make it interesting to you then, Daniel?
To me, it would be interesting as if it were, we weren't, I mean, which is completely against your concept. That's why it won't work, is that I don't want to deal with like a world where it's just literally a vomit of fictional realities. Like where Dragon Ball shows up next to, look, the way I took his premise was like different genres confluence here. So like a starship might show up with like some wizards and some swordsmen and like a superhero, but not literally like Battlestar Galactica, Superman, and Final Fantasy. That's what I thought it was.
Okay, but the thing is, like in my research toward like into Rhydin, I noticed like people were jazzed about watching dragons fight back to back with Jedi. Like that is part of the nostalgia for this online fiction. So if we genericize it, it's the same thing as like we don't have to have Superman, we don't have to have Luke Skywalker, but we have to have superheroes and Jedi. That's the idea.
Yeah, like that I could get behind. I just thought we literally mean like Cloud Strife is showing up in this universe.
Okay, yes.
That I think is just dumb. That's the problem.
Daniel, why can't you embrace dumb here? Because that's what this is about.
Because to me, it's like if I'm world building, it's a waste of time. It's like going back to being 13 and world building with Legos that just are silly to put together.
Daniel, every time we role play, it's going back to 13 and creating cool fantasy shit. Okay.
Yeah, but we're not literally playing like Vegeta fighting.
Okay, but what's the difference between Vegeta TMCR and like legally distinct Vegeta?
Well, you're creating your own actual story. Like one is performing in another person's space, performing.
So why can't? So that's actually really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So are you suggesting that you cannot play Dungeons and Dragons in a Forgotten Realm setting because you're playing in another person's space?
No, I'm not saying that. Like because you're kind of using maybe like you're playing in someone's sandbox there. But I am suggesting is that you're not really the enterprise of like creative work or world building. You're not really doing it if you're doing fandom work. It's a different thing, is what I'm saying.
Okay,
like I would definitely have to tier them. I would definitely say like running a campaign in Forgotten Realms and using D&D IP is inferior intellectually to running a campaign in IP that you created. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay. Can we reconcile this then? Can we just acknowledge that we're going to be having IP adjacent stuff and then recognizing that we're not going to be like we can have this is all just going to be fan fiction of fan fiction. Can we at least acknowledge that?
Yeah, I mean, I get that's what the concept is. It's kind of like the Link episode. True, I was less excited about too, but like that one is like the sandbox concept, right? You're working in a setting that's a fiction unto itself, as opposed to like mixing a bunch of them together in a silly way, which is why I hate Ready Player One. Even that one though is that one isn't even as bad because Ready Player One is a thing unto itself. It just references stuff from the real world. So it's not really a fan fiction. This one literally is.
No, Ready Player One absolutely is a fan fiction. It's just a fan fiction of the real world. But my point is like, well, wait a minute. I don't understand the difference then. If we just have like, hey, this is like character who is a Jedi and character who is a superhero, I don't understand why that is like so awful because there's the you know, like they're the progeny of, you know, Luke Skywalker and Boba Fett or some shit like that.
Well, what if you had it as going back to the Topa, like way of it, of where they are coming here, but they're coming here more as the broad stroke concepts. So when they came here, you didn't just get Superman, you did get Goku like people, but you got each kind of iteration of it, not essentially Goku or Superman. You also got like off-brand Superman that looks like Ultraman, like things that have that same power, things that encapsulate that same idea of this is a super strong person with a strong sense of justice.
Well, actually, that kind of comes up. I think we might have a creative out here, Daniel, because Chris just gave us a really cool idea. What if we have like that was the original 1999 version, is where you're getting straight up, you know, like Jedi and shit like that. But as time passes, it becomes less and less clear. So it's like you put more and more Vaseline on the lens to the point where it's like, oh, that's not a Jedi, that's a star destroyer, man, like a star killer, you know, like something like that, to where we are now,
Is that on
you know, like
purpose?
30, yes, it was 30 years later, you know, it's 30 years on and the lens is so blurry that we're not getting Jedi, but we're getting something that is like several generations removed from Jedi, you know, like because of that kind of in a bottle situation, time in a bottle situation.
I mean, maybe one way to do what you're suggesting, because like what you're reacting to or what you're interested in is the nostalgia, right? Like what's close to what we grew up with and telling stories that are like it, right? So, I mean, what if you have the characters in this setting, this millennial virus or whatever happens, and because they come from that kind of time, the rest of the world has taken on its aspects have taken on what they grew up with, and that's why you have an influx of all these things that are kind of manifested in multiple realities from what they care about. You know what I mean? Like then you would have like it would be a reason why stuff like Superman and any 1990s stuff is showing up physically in this realm.
Wait. The way to defeat the millennial virus kind of thing is kind of like what happened with God Emperor Doom, about how he had to like refit the world back into what he wanted, but it was, you can see the things that reminded you of.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Like it's a psychic imprint of there's a reason why it's coming out is because the people there are from that time.
Right. Yeah. That's what a tulpa is. Yeah. It's an idea given like consciousness.
So maybe I misunderstand like the concept. Maybe that's what you mean is like the people in Rhydin at that time, you know, have a nostalgia for the 90s. And so their like psychic influence is what's pulling all these things into them.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like literally like, sure, you know.
Oh no, I don't mean literal Luke Skywalker and literal Superman.
That's what I was asking.
No. That's dumb as fuck.
That's exactly. See, now you understand. That's what I was.
Okay,
that's what I was picturing when I said, "Are they literally showing up?"
Okay, yeah. I mean the idea that is Superman, and the idea that, but I do mean like branded Superman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like because they believe in Superman, a Superman figure, if not himself, appears. But it's like not that he exists out in the world. It's just that it's been manifested because of them.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Oh yeah, that I totally get. That's why I asked, like, are we literally doing fanfic? That's what I meant when I asked.
Okay. So I suppose I misunderstood when you were asking about fan fiction, because I'm like, basically, yeah. You know, because like
you mean like thematically.
Like thematically, yes, because these are essentially tulpa.
It's kind of like when I was asking you, do you literally believe that the things in the Bible happened? That's kind of what I was asking.
Oh man, Daniel, I'm glad that we had our first fight on the podcast live. So,
well, I was just trying to get back on the boat because I'm like, this boat looks really silly to me.
You're like, this boat is rotten and full of holes, and I'm not into it. Yeah. All right, Daniel, are you now into Dumb Bullshit Island? Are we?
Yeah, now I get it, because now it's more like, you know, now it has a drama. Now it's tied in like a fiction that we made up. Like there's people who are there who have this impulse, you know.
All right. Oh man. I'm sorry that everyone had to hear our breakup episode live as it happened. Did you just do your tenant? The plot hole thing, right?
The plot hole one, yeah, I did that one. I think that one can still work because that one we
Okay.
can play with it, take it wherever you want.
Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
like the idea of plot hole because that could mean multiple things. It could mean like in a literal fanfic, it would literally mean a plot hole. But here it could mean like there's something, a contradiction, with the people in Rhydin that's causing, you know, these things to be pulled in there and limiting the time period that the multiverse can pull in.
Yes. Okay. Okay, now that we're both understanding the same thing, now we can both get simultaneously excited about a plot hole manifesting. Okay. God, that took forever, but I'm glad that we got there so everyone can understand.
Yeah, now we all on the same page. That's the idea.
All right, that's important. See, and this is the thing, guys. Whenever you're doing any kind of world building that's collaborative, you want to have these clarifying conversations because otherwise you can't have this kind of like, I don't know, that doesn't sound what I want. Right, and you want everyone to be as excited for dumb bullshit like a plot hole as Daniel and I are now.
Because now I'm like, I'm excited about these people who have this contradiction and the reason why, for some reason, they're limited to this time period of their nostalgia. Their nostalgia is now somehow dangerous.
Yes, and that's also what I was kind of interested in as well. Right. Is this idea of like creating a prison out of nostalgia?
Yes, that's interesting to me.
Yeah. Chris, save us from this nightmare and give us your next tenant.
Oh, God damn it. All technology does work when it arrives in this nexus, but it works to a kind of degree of averages. So I wanted to do this on a single planet. I'm not sure if that's safe or the way that it works, but it was a way to explain if faster than light technology happens. It still works, but it's more on the scale of you will go very quickly from point A to point B, but not anywhere near of like traveling between the stars. It's more like you now have a ship that's very fast for traveling in between cities.
In fact, literal fast travel.
Correct, but it's not like in the blink of the eye. So imagine if there was the fastest car would go up to 200 miles an hour. An FTL drive would somehow just be like a bullet train.
Mm-hmm. So these are like weird power limiters almost in a way.
Correct. Same thing with like imagine so people don't come in here with machine gun nukes, as it were.
Oh, you mean Warhammer 40K?
Yes, yeah. You got to prepare for the Warhammer 40K.
So I suppose that's true, huh?
Are you like providing? So you mean like there's got to be some limitation for, say, the Disney group that's in charge of like entrance into this place? They've got to impose some kind of limitation on technology that comes in. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Imagine if there is some underlining code or force that just doesn't allow things to work as strong as they used to.
You mean like an admin?
Yes. Yes.
Where's the question? Like, is this is the space of Rhydin? Is it a whole planet? Is it a city, a country? Like, what are we dealing with space wise?
I thought it was like a very large mega city on a planet.
That's what I thought too.
That's also my thinking, but I don't understand. I don't understand why we can't just make it a planet, you know, but like also have faster than light travel and all that stuff. One thing I am kind of concerned about though is this idea of like, obviously you can't have starships or too many starships because eventually Earth's like airspace is just going to be like the sun blotted out with 1 million starships eventually, right?
Could it be a weird cosmology though? So like it's not really a planet, it's like a collection of landscapes through a type of space that's unusual.
Like zones or
like a Spelljammer kind of thing.
Yeah, sure, we can do that. Yeah.
That way you can have spaceships, but like the physics are different in this space. So that's why maybe they don't have their nukes don't work the same way. So maybe that's what it is, Chris. Like the physics are different in Rhydin.
Oh, okay. I like that justification quite a bit.
There was actually a short story that I read where there was this main city where many different time periods and kind of multiversal things would exist. And as you left the city bounds, things would become less tethered in reality, quote
Ooh, I like
unquote
that.
reality.
Cool.
But as you traveled out, you might find like waypoints where reality once again is anchored.
Oh,
Mhm.
maybe that has something to do with the people behind Rhydin and the plot hole, and that like the closer you are to Rhydin, the closer you are to like something that's real and fixed, and the
Mhm.
farther away you go, the more things unravel.
But then there's other places of power where
Yeah.
things are more stable, and that's where people can set up bases, and
hmm
as they set up bases it just becomes more real.
Maybe it has something to do with the people themselves, like the ones who set up the base. Maybe they have like some strong belief, just like Rhydin has a strong nostalgia for a certain time.
Okay, is this where we can kind of have like the multivarious, like settings and everything? Like, so if you enter this
Mhm.
particular zone, suddenly the physics work differently, and you can now have like Saiyans at their most powerful, where they're like
Yeah,
essentially deleting landscapes. But
yeah,
like that same character shifts over to like a Starship Troopers area, so they can't do their normal like Kamehameha and like destroy the bugs and everything like that, but it's going to be something similar to that.
yeah. I think it has something to do too with like approaching a zone. There's someone or something. Maybe there's a group of people who have a strong belief for that sort of like fanfare, fan fiction, or that fiction, right? And that
Yeah.
dictates how the rules work there.
All right, so we went from
Yeah.
point A to point B a little bit wider, but it seems like the hard rule would be that each area, as you get out from the central nexus, is its own plane of existence, but you can see to it. And oh,
Yeah.
the thing that I like is maybe the point of where everyone is the weakest is where the nexus is, where everyone enters.
Oh, that's
This
interesting.
Okay.
way it's like a flat ground of where, oh, you have a superpowered being and uh, I don't know, like a freaking medieval peasant. They actually
Mhm.
might be able to fight each other
Because
because
their
his
belief
laser
is
beams are like a
crystallized.
bad sunburn.
I see.
Okay, yeah, so,
That's cool. Yeah.
yeah, that I can understand, and that would kind of go towards my like recruiting station where they're like, hey, come, are you from this normal, or rather, it can kind of go with my recruiting idea where it's like, hey, are you used to cowboys fighting robots? Come over with us. Hey, are you used to like Cowboy Bebop? Hey, come
Yeah,
over to us, to the anime station. Like stuff like that,
that
where
makes sense. And that'll be why it's like Disney white, because it's like an advertising. It's basically.
exactly right. Yes.
I'm also just loving the idea in the early days of this Nexus, just some medieval peasant with like a scythe killing Superman.
We got to get him on the team. We got to get Scythe Peasant on the team.
Well, what's really cool too is like this recruiting area is probably it's styled like the '90s. That's why like because the people in charge of the area are the '90s people, right? They're the ones with that hold the Nexus together with their belief,
Sure.
or at least they're trying to stop something bad from happening.
Yes. Yeah, right. Exactly right. Oh, all right. Does anyone have any tenets left? Because I feel like we're getting towards the twist. I feel like we're already at the twist of the setting.
My second tenet was that it's not an accident that people are sucked up into Rhydin, contrary to popular belief, and there's intention behind its pulling of people from the multiverse.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, yeah, because now we get into the idea of like recruitment and everything like that. But also, like maybe it's not known to the people who are actively recruiting, but there's some other nefarious means that are, actively sucking people
Yeah,
in.
that's what I mean. Like something
Yeah.
going under the shadows.
Have you ever read Top 10?
No.
Why does that sound familiar?
Oh god, this is embarrassing and I wish we weren't recording. He also, I believe, wrote Transmet.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah. So Top 10 is where there were a bunch of different multiverses, and I believe the multiverse that the comic takes place in is effectively the nexus of the superhero genre.
Oh, okay.
But the number one genre is they never go out and say it, but they have like a exchange program where they go see Precinct 1, and I think Precinct 1 is like literal Roman gods and everything. But
Chris, I'm going to have to stop you. I apologize. Top 10 is actually written by Alan Moore.
even more embarrassing.
Yeah, I did want to point that out because otherwise we would catch an inordinate amount of shit. And I want to just get the embarrassment out there for you now.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, no, right. But I'm saving you compounded embarrassment by just stopping and saving you now.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Continue on with your poorly made point.
Oh.
I'm joking, of course. I love you and your bad calls.
Oh.
Hey, by the way, looking at this Wikipedia article, you know it came out in 1999?
Yeah.
Top 10.
Oh, yeah.
So anyways, Chris, you were talking about Top 10 by Alan Moore. Go ahead.
In it, one of the things that they also talk about is that there is kind of like a grand game of things that is going on of good versus evil. And no one quite understands what it is. Like, it's a very, to go back to our Lovecraftian episode about how we can't comprehend the game that's being played. Much like that, the people in the Nexus here, they know that they're being chosen, but they don't know why. And
yeah, that's kind of like what I was getting at.
They don't even know what the stakes are or what the win scenario is. But also, I just like how gods and everything do like crop up in fiction, and how they barely exist, or the more they barely exist, the better.
You know, I just realized that we're also getting a really deep vibe of like the City of Mist setting. If you guys know that at all. Yeah.
It makes me think of like Sandman too.
Oh yeah. All right, gentlemen, I feel like we're at a good point where we can roll into a twist. How's everyone with that?
Yeah, that seems good.
So, gentlemen, we're at a point where we need to throw in a twist that's going to mess everything up here. Now, the subject of this... Oh, wait. Never mind. So, let's go ahead and throw in the twist. Our twist is we have an unreliable main character / narrator, which actually is kind of interesting when it comes to this type of stuff.
I like that.
Yeah, because now we get into some really interesting topics here. But you'll have to wait until next episode for us to discuss that as we kind of reconcile what the fuck we're going to do with an unreliable main character / narrator. So that'll do it for this week's episode of World Build with us. And remember that if you want us to build your world, you can go ahead and send us an email at worldbuildwithus@gmail.com, or shoot us a tweet over at Let's Worldbuild. Or if you want to come join our community, chat with us about world building, or just, life in general, go ahead and join our Discord. And if you're feeling particularly generous, you can always donate to us on Patreon. All that information is going to be in the description. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. We'd also like to thank our patrons. We have Jason, John, Clark, Lord of all Chris's, Seth, and Jacob. These people are the reason we continue to do the podcast. Thank you all so much for your continued support.